Hello, my name is David Giles of Hitex UK Ltd, and this is a short presentation on the MDK-ARM toolchain from Keil. And in this particular section we'll be covering the code editor features of MicroVision. Okay, let's get up and running then. Let's open an existing MicroVision project. This is a project which contains multiple source files. Have all of my project files, if you like, contained within this project window, which I've separated out into the startup code and the source files. Similarly down here I've taken all of my header files and grouped those together as well. And if I click on the build symbol, which is this one here, you can see that I have a project that works and compiles and build. The purpose of the session today is to give you an overview of some of the features which are present within MicroVision. Okay, so kind of looking on the screen, we have a series of windows. Here we have a project window which is on the left, and we have a collection of C source files which are displayed here on the right. So if I come down to portstructure.c, for example, and I double click on this, then on the right hand side that actual file is opened, and we can see the code which relates to that. So this is a classical example of an IDE where you have a project window on the left and you have the source files on the right hand side. And by clicking on the files on the left, you can actually open ones on the right. The windows, as you can see, are arranged generally by default in this arrangement, where you have a project window on the left, the source files on the right, and a build output window below. But MicroVision is very flexible, and you can actually move the windows around. So if I grab this build window here by clicking and holding with the left mouse keys and I attempt to drag it, you'll notice that a series of arrows appear on the screen. We have one here on the left hand side, we have one here at the bottom of the screen, and similarly we've got one on the right and one on the top. So if I drag it down to the bottom, which was where it come from, you can see that we've kind of got a blue shaded area which is going to indicate where that window is going to be dropped if I release the mouse key. If I click and hold it again, and this time bring it up to the right hand side, you can see where we have the shaded window now. So now I've got the build output on the left, got the project window in the middle, and I've also got the source files on the right hand side as well. I can bring up a few more windows. We've got something called a functions window as well. This has been added into the project main window. So let me just reorganize these back to how they was. So I'll click and hold the build output window, and I drag it down and dock it on the bottom, and you can see now that we've got the project window on the left. Contained within here are a couple of additional tabs, one called books and one's called functions. The functions tab, which is one which I've just added, displays all of the functions that are present within the application. So for example, I can click on RS-232 support here, open this up, and you can see where it's actually used. So again, I can double click on here, which is get a complete number, and get a complete number is opened up, and as you can see here, that's one of the functions that's contained within RS-232 support.c. Similarly with I2C0.c, I can open that up, and I get a list of all of the functions which are contained within that C source file. So it's a quick way of navigating around the source file. So I can come into here, for example, portstructure.c. I can double click on it. This is my C source file. So you can see there's some header files and a whole load of function prototypes up there. This is quite a busy file, so if I just want to have a look at the functions that are contained within there, I can open this function tab. I can look at portstructure.c, which is just here, and that's the list of all of the functions which are located within that module. I can also click and grab this functions window as we're talking about the docking, and I can move this over into this central area here, and I can dock that within the files window. So for example, if I come back to port structure, which as we said was quite a busy file, and I open that up, and then I can double click down here, and immediately I get taken to where that function is actually defined. So it's quite a nice little feature that we can actually move around these windows to where we want them. So here, for example, I could have all the functions detailed on the right hand side. So you can organize the windows very much as you like. If you need help on MicroVision or the C compiler, there is a Books tab as well. So you can click on the Books tab, and then you can come into the Tools User Guide. And obviously the one that we're interested in is the Complete User Guide selection. So I double click on here, and this basically opens up with the contents of the user guide. So for the English version of the user guide for MicroVision, MicroVision IDE user guide, and then come down to user interfaces. Here, for example, is the docking window. So this is obviously all detailed and contained within the user manual. Okay, so we've just seen how we can actually move windows around, and we can dock and undock windows, and we can arrange the screen as we want. There's another window which I'd like to show you. If I come up into the tabs on the top and we do View, Source Browser Window, you'll notice at the bottom here Keil MicroVision has basically provided us with a browser window. It's added as a tab into the build output. So here, this is the compilation build output, and next to it we now have something called a browser window. So let's say, for example, within the module I2C.0, we were interested in looking at all the global variables and all the functions and all the other symbols which we use within that C file. We can kind of examine this in a little bit more detail by coming into the symbol browser. Here it's actually currently set by default for all files, but I'm going to kind of narrow the search down a little bit just for the I2C component. So if I can just find it, I2C0.c. And now if I want to have a look at all of the functions that are contained within that file, I just click on this little functions tab which we have here. So I click on functions, and as you can see, Keil MicroVision has now detailed the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 functions that are contained within that module. It tells us what kind of class it is. So as you can see, it's a function, it's a function type, and it's located within the code space. Here, for example, I2C engine has 4 uses. So if I just highlight I2C engine on the right hand side, within this browser window, we get the definitions and references. So as you can see here, we have a D in square brackets, which indicates the definition is on line 339 of the C source module. So I can double click here, and in the C source file window, which is displayed above, we can see that I2C engine is highlighted for us. The prototype definition for it is also referenced in I2C0.h. So again, I can double click on here, and the file automatically opens for us, and as you can see, we have the reference to the function prototype there as well. Similarly, the uses of it, we can see that I2C engine is called on line 51, and if I double click on this item here, it will also take us to where that's displayed in the source code, which is line 66. So as you can see here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 functions, of which 4 begin with I2C, and one of which begins with setup. We can actually thin down the list by typing in a few letters up here. So I can do I2C and then followed by the star character and hit the return key, and you can see we only now display 4 of the total 5 available to us. And again, we can use the same process of finding where the definition is and where the usage for each of the different functions. This browser is obviously not restricted to just function names. If I deselect the functions tab and I go into the data tab and click on, say, RD index, for example, here we've got a definition on line 57, which shows a volatile read index counter, and that's actually referenced now on all of these other lines within here. So that's a read reference, that's a read write reference there. and so forth. There we have a right reference to that particular symbol, and again we can thin this down quite significantly by putting a few characters and wildcards, etc. in there. You can also thin out by these memory spaces as well. So we've got ERAM, which is external RAM, data, constants, SROM, and also code. And the other thing which we can do is we don't necessarily just have to look at one specific C source file, so we can look at all files. So if I highlight all files here, so now we can look at all variables which begin with R. So here, for example, RTC array. So this has brought up PCF 8583, which is a serial latch device. And if I click on the definition, RTC array, real-time clock array, and here we have it being referenced again. Okay, so that's the symbol browser. As with all of these windows, you can actually grab them and you can move them onto other monitors. So if you have multiple monitors or a much larger screen, you can actually undock them from within MicroVision and you can move them over to other monitors as well. Okay, in addition to moving the windows around, we also have some toolbars on the top of the screen here. So a toolbar is identified with this little icon which you see here. You can actually move these around, you can undock them. So I can grab this toolbar and I can move it to another point where I want it on the screen. So as you can see, I've now just moved the compile and build toolbar into a different area. So it's very flexible in terms of kind of how you want to lay items out. Okay, so navigating around the screen, that's something which is going to improve your productivity quite significantly. So being familiar with all the shortcuts and so forth. Obviously, to highlight text, you can just put the mouse over a block of code, and you can use the standard Windows commands such as Control C for copy, Control X for cut, and Control V for paste. There's also Control Z, which is undo, and Control Y, which is redo the undo. So there's quite a lot of short key cuts which you can do as well. So Control A, you select all of the file. Again, that's just a standard Windows command. Some of the other things you might be interested to know, if you hold the Control key down and use the left and right arrows, it actually skips to the start of the next word. So Control right shift will go to and Control right shift again will go to date, and similarly holding the Control key down and pressing the left arrow skips to the previous start of the word. So that's kind of quite useful as well. Quite often you might have a prototype set up towards the top of a document, and you might have the actual function down at the bottom. So if you're switching between the two, it's quite useful to set up bookmarks. So what we can do is create a bookmark on say line 17 here, for example. So place the cursor on line 17, and then I come up onto the icon bar and click the bookmark icon. And as you can see, we now have a bookmark icon actually positioned in the margin on the left hand side. I can choose a second bookmark, so I actually come down to the function here, which is actually on line 48, and I can come up and click the bookmark icon again. So now we have two bookmarks. We have one on line 17 and we have one on line 48. And flicking backwards and forwards between the bookmarks is relatively easy, as we've got two icons which do this for us. So this is the go back or the previous icon, so I'll click on there, and as you can see, we go back to the function prototype, and click again to go forward. I can have more than two bookmarks. I can come down to here and then click on the bookmarks tab to create another one. Maybe another one down here. You can also do this with the right mouse click as well. So here we've got insert bookmark. When we want to clear all of the bookmarks, we can go on to this icon here, and this will clear all of the bookmarks for us. Again, there's a shortcut key there which is highlighted in the tools tips. Okay, so that's setting up bookmarks and navigating backwards and forwards. If we need to find a variable, we can use the Control F which brings up the search dialog. So Control F. Here I'm looking for a variable called month, so click on Find Next, and as you can see, it takes us immediately down to it. You can bring up Control F again, and now you can do Find Next, so it'll now find the next instance of that. But you can also do Mark All. So what will happen now is that the margin will be dotted with bookmarks for that particular find that you were interested in. Rather than bring up Control F and do Find Next, there is a shortcut key which is F3. So pressing F3 just skips you forward to the next instance of that last search. And of course, to go backwards, it's simply Shift F3. F3 to go forward, Shift F3 to go backwards. You can also do a replace, which is very similar to a find as well. So you can do Edit, Replace, and then find what month, and then you can replace it with another variable. And you can do a single replace, or you can do a replace all. So that's quite useful as well. So kind of knowing your way around these menus is going to improve your productivity quite significantly. So looking at the toolbar up here, we have navigate backwards and we have navigate forwards icons. This is quite good again for skipping between different positions. So if we don't want to use bookmarks, so for example if we're just using Control F for a search, so if I bring up the find menu, and we're looking now for a variable called status register, and I click on find next, the search engine will take me to line 262 in the source code, where it first comes across the text string status register. So if I want to go back to where it originally was, I can go back up onto here and click on the navigate backwards icon, and that will take me back to where I was. And similarly, I can click navigate forwards, which effectively just repeats the search again. It takes me to where the search last went, which is there. So relatively simple to use the navigate forward and backward icons. In terms of searching, what you can do also is you can highlight a text. Here I just double click the text, and mode has been selected, and then I can do Control F. So when you bring up the search menu, you have the word mode already pre-filled for you in the find what column. So another click on next, you can see it's now found the next instance of mode. There's a few things which you can do. You can match the case as well. So obviously the original search was the lowercase mode, and it's picked up an uppercase mode, and you can do match the whole word only, match the case, or a regular expression, and you can search both forwards and backwards. Also all the other things which you've searched on, which were status register and month, for example, in this session, it's also remembered for you as well. So searching is a relatively simple thing to do. Okay, so looking at the toolbar, there are a few icons that we've not covered yet. If I highlight a block of text here, some more of the icons actually become available to us. So this one here is the indentation selection, which quite often needs to be in accordance with your in-house coding standard. So here, for example, if the code needs to be indented by one tab less, I can click on the reduce ident tab, or the unident selection, and you can see the whole block is shifted by one tab space to the left. If I click it again, it's reduced further by one tab space. And if I click the indent selection, obviously it has the opposite effect. So very simple to use, obviously. If I need to comment out all of this code, then we can insert the C++ comment, which is the double backslash. So I can immediately remove a whole chunk of code from the application by doing that. And to undo that, I can just go back into the uncomment selection. So that's a very useful technique for commenting and uncommenting code. The other icons, we've got finding files. We've got find, which we've covered, which is the Control F. We have an incremental find icon, which you see here. So I'll click on this icon. As I type the letters into the keyboard, these perform a text string, which is then searched on by MicroVision. So for example, if we're looking for the text string small, I type the letter S, and MicroVision immediately highlights something which you can find with S in, followed by M on the keyboard, SM, and here we can see that MicroVision's found transmission where an S and M are next to each other. Then I type the letter A, and as you can see, MicroVision has dropped down to where it can find SMA. So that's incremental find, and then to escape out of it, just press the escape key, and the cursor's left next to the area that you were doing the incremental search on. Okay, we're getting towards the end of the module now. There's not a great deal left to cover in this particular section, so I just want to cover finding files, which, as its name suggests, is looking for a text string contained within a file. Here we're looking for the text string temp8, and we're going to search all C files, all header files, assembler source files, and so forth, currently within the current project file. Again, just like with Control F, we can match the whole word or the case, and if I just click on find, it will then do a search for us. What's actually been generated for us is another window called finding files, and that's automatically been added below the C source file area. This is available to us, this window, in the view finding files window, so I can actually turn that off and also turn it back on again. And of course, as you would expect with any kind of search engine, temp8 here has been found, for example, in line 273 and 287. If I double click on here, that particular C source file is open for us, and the cursor is actually placed at the line where the reference is made, so in this case 287. Okay, we've covered most of the windows now. There's one that we've not covered, which is actually the templates window. So if I bring the templates window up, you can see here within the project windows we have project, books, and functions. There's now another one which has just been added, which is called templates. So for example, if we want to create a new function for ourselves, we can come into here and we can pick up the void, for example. What I can do is highlight void, do right click, and then do insert template, and as you can see, it's now included a basic function prototype for us for void, which allows us then to fill in all the other items which we need. So my function void, for example. Obviously some of them are a little bit more useful, so like the switch statement, for example. So if I click on switch and then do right click, insert template, we now get the switch statement followed by all the cases. So I can switch var 100 for example, case of 25, and so forth. So that's quite a useful little feature. So again, most of the basic C constructs are included in here. The standard templates provided by Keil have most of the key C compiler constructs, but you can create your own as well. So if you come into the templates tab and do right click, configure templates, and then choose ARM editor C files. Obviously this is a C project rather than a C++ project. And then I click on this little tab here, which is new, so I'll call one called serial new, and then I'll create the text that I want to represent that template down here. So this is just some basic code to put in there, and then I click on OK. And then when you want to insert the template into your code, just start off by typing the name of the template and then hold down the control key and hit the space bar, and then that's then substituted for the template which you've created within the templates configuration menu. It should be possible to select it from this menu here on the left hand side as well. And that completes the short presentation, so thank you for listening. For UK and Ireland customers, if you need any additional information, please contact myself, David Giles, at Hitex UK Ltd, dgiles@hitex.co.uk. Thank you.